Hi. I recently got an email from Richard, and Richard is a rivet counter who has been following my channel and who is maybe, well, first of all, I'm so glad to have you, Richard. This is not necessarily a channel for competitive players only. I hope everyone can enjoy something of what I do and can learn from something from what I do. There are different reasons that we are attracted to the game. For me, it's the competitive side. For somebody else, it's something else. And I will gladly help anyone who wants to get who not wants to not get their face kicked in every time they play a game, but who enjoy different aspects of it than myself. So I'm really happy that it's not just whackers and evil uh, competitive players that are here. Um, Richard sent me a list, and and he actually sent me two. He sent me his old list, which he got his face kicked in at an event, and a new list, and wanted me to just have it at once over and see if I would do something different. And I'll gladly do that. Here we go. Right. So this is 15 order dice, 999 point. I like 15 order dice. That's a good place to be at. Just in with the amount of order dice in the bag, that means that you won't be outdiced all the time. So that's a good start. British Winter, so it's a themed army, 1944 to 1945. That sort of rules out some of the worst excesses of the competitive scene right now, where early war tanks are a thing, right? So we're building a themed army here. Second lieutenant, inexperienced, with an extra man. Yes. Um, if you have Richard, or if you haven't, go and watch my video on how to use lieutenants. I think that there may have been something useful in that. This is sort of a build of one of those where I sort of see either a pin machine or a tax being paid here. Um, Maybe you can decide that this could be a morale bubble as well, depending on how you use it, right? So I often run my lieutenants like you do here. Then we have regular mid to late war infantry sections. Two of those, they are built very similarly. Submachine guns and riflemen. Now, competitively, these units are larger than they need to be. Hear me out. Competitively, what I often do is I try to fix in my mind what it is, the role that I want each unit to have. For regular infantry, I think the best role that they are suited for is skirmishing. Skirmishing is, you don't need 8-man units to be an effective skirmisher. What skirmishers do is that they deliver a pin to their target, maybe get them to go down, or maybe give them a casualty. And you do that, you can just as well do that with a 6-man unit as an 8-man unit. And they are better when they only have rifles for that purpose. So for me, I would cut these two units down in size to 6-man units and just drop the submachine guns, because the submachine guns says to me that you want to get up close and personal. Skirmishers don't, and regulars don't want to do that when there are such things as Gurkhas and Polish lancers out there. You don't want to do that. Japanese infantry. Right. So no, just don't. Just stay at range and use the rifles. That would work perfectly fine for me. That is the first place where you could save a few points. And of course, you can ignore all my advice saying this is for thematic reasons. I'll just give the competitive advice here, right? And you can decide what you want to do for theme. Then we have the free artillery observer. Of course, you take him. One more section here with just one submachine gun and rifles. Again, I think I would cut this down. Two engineer sections. Now these actually could benefit from a submachine gun. So some of the submachine guns that you have in the other unit, you could push down to these. These are 5-man units. This is how most people run them. With a flamethrower and some rifles, one SMG wouldn't come amiss here, because most of the time they are going to be very close to the enemy when they unload. So I think like the NCO with a submachine gun here worked perfectly fine. If you have the points, throw a few more submachine guns into the unit if you can. I can't remember if you can do that with Royal Engineers. Should really have looked that up, shouldn't I? But I don't like read the lists before I do these recordings. I react to them real time. Um, Vengeance, I like Vengeance for National Rule because it's so useful for the whole army. You could also, with this amount of riflemen, you could go and take that rifle drill, can't remember what it's called, where you get an extra shot per 3 rifles. That might actually also be useful. But Vengeance, it's useful for everything, right? So that's always good. Medium mortar inexperience. You said you struggle with the competitive mindset. That is very competitive mindset, isn't it? Um, yes, medium mortar. You take them inexperienced because most of the time you're just shooting indirectly anyway, so you're not getting that -1. And the only thing that you have to be weary of is enemy snipers, and you have your own sniper to deal with that. So yeah, I would place that behind some line of sight blocking cover to start with, and then once you know where the enemy sniper is deployed, move him the other way, start shooting. The sniper team, always useful, loads of people like the snipers. And peer team, also very useful, although I do find that range band to be annoying, right? Um, it's really a poor man's bazooka, isn't it? Medium artillery with a spotter, lovely, love that. You might go light artillery instead. A light howitzer with that 24-pounder AT shell, very useful and a little bit cheaper as well. But a medium howitzer is not to be sneezed at. It's a good gun. It has a gun shield. It has a lot of men. It has a spotter, so really good. Transport to Bren carriers, I am guessing for those engineers. And you are running with the LMG Pintle, of course. Good. These are really good. Lovely. And then we have one Jeep that is for the Piat, which inexperienced, yes, because you're just going to throw it up with the Piat in it. This cannot really be a good outflanking choice, but most of the time I would just deploy it behind some line of sight blocking cover where I would expect the enemy tank to go, because most of the time the enemy will have one tank. I'll deploy facing that and just threaten it away. The more time the enemy tank spends on moving, the less time it'll spend on killing you. So that's always good. And an M5A1 Steward. Reinforced frontal armor. I don't think I would never run a Steward if it wasn't a darker version Steward. But you can. Stewards are not bad as such. I think that there are better choices, late war choices as well, that you could take. The Staghound springs to mind. The AEC springs to mind because they have Recce. That is more usable than the reinforced armor, because that reinforced frontal armor, yes, it does give you, is it 9+ front, but that is, I mean, the Panzerfaust will still punch through that, right? So for me, I would look at maybe the armored cars. The armored cars of the Brits is the best selection of any army, with the possible exception of the Soviets. Or I might look at a Sherman, and if you can't remember if that is only for Americans, but there is a howitzer version of the Sherman. That's pretty good, and that would mean a third HE shot coming out of your list. Richard, that was my thoughts. This is not a bad list. Not a bad list at all. The only thing that I disagree with is the submachine guns. This for me would be a 3, maybe a little bit less because of the tank, but more or less that. So not a non-competitive list. It has its chances. It's not the top, and but keeping to the theme, which I think you should, because that's what brings you joy. This is very thematic, and it still has chances. So yeah, thank you so much for the list, Richard, and thank you for the listen. Lovely to hear from you. Cheers.